Today's spooky spot, we're having a look at the Universal Studios, home of the original monsters, Monster Series 1, Dracula. Collect all 5 Universal monsters and build your very own 14-inch Frankenstein. This package includes Frankenstein's arm and head. Just one arm and obviously one head. This was a line that Spot has had for a bit, and every single year has wanting to review these, and I just haven't had a chance. And I thought to myself, this time around, this spooky Spot, we're going to get these reviewed. And Spot has all of them, and so you're going to see the review of all 5 of them. So, I love the packaging, and probably something I'm only going to touch base on the first review, the very first figure. I like that coffin shaped that they've got going on with the Universal monsters here. Now you get yourself here, Dracula, and Spot will touch base obviously on the look of Dracula when we get the out of package. But I would say by comparison, it definitely looks more like Bela Lugosi than some of the other Dracula figures we've gotten before and since. On the back of the package, the Frankenstein series, collect them all. You can also get the creature from the Black Lagoon, of course Dracula, the Mummy, Frankenstein, and Wolfman. Universal Studios Monsters, trademark. This, by the way, it comes to us from Toy Island. A line that, like this line as a whole, was really not circulated well at all. I think ultimately Spot picked these up later through, I think I had actually gone to a toy show and picked these all up. But they never made it to many retail stores, and when they did, they didn't last very long at all. Having said that, Spot's going to take himself a terrifying break. I'm going to get this opened up, and when we come back, we're going to have the look at the very first figure from the Frankenstein series of Universal Monsters. We're going to be having a look at Dracula. Don't go anywhere. Stay tuned. Really, for such a forgotten line, this is probably one of the coolest line of Universal Monsters that Spot's ever picked up. And again, I'm really happy that I'm able to finally review these for you guys that have probably been looking to see reviews of these for the longest time. The first accessory that comes with Dracula is an incredible display stand. Though, you know, it's a basic black display stand. Got Dracula written on the front there, 2 pegs for his feet, and a section on the back. The section on the back is to house the back card that comes with Dracula. This is Dracula the Vampire. It says Universal Pictures. Simplistic, yes, but I kind of like it. It's kind of got almost an Italian poster design to it. It's very stylized, really digging that quite a bit. And by having him on the display stand, Dracula looks quite awesome indeed. So you get yourself the display stand. I'm just going to take that, put that to the back for a second. The components for Frankenstein, Spot's not going to talk about Frankenstein's monster. We're just going to call him Frankenstein for the sake of this review. The pieces of Frankenstein you get with Dracula is you get yourself one standalone arm, which has articulation in the wrist area or forearm area. There's a bend in the elbow, and of course the peg at the top. The peg is extremely stiff, which I'm hoping I'm going to be able to fix later. But we won't really deal with that now. We'll obviously deal with it when we're building Frankenstein. And the very crucial part for him to see and be chased eventually by angry townspeople, obviously he needs his head. The question you're probably going to be immediately asking, well, Spot, why would you have a build figure of a character that's already part of the line? Frankenstein's monster essentially is one of the characters, one of the 5 characters that make up the set. Why have Frankenstein and then have a build-a-figure version of himself as well? An odd pairing, I think, if anything. I can understand that they would want to incorporate Frankenstein of the same scale as the other figures. But then again, also, too, it's nice to have a tall version of Frankenstein. Even if you don't pair him along with the other 6-inch figures, you can have a really tall Frankenstein just to hang out, just to sit on a shelf. So I can understand. Good idea, though initially you might look at it and say, well, why would you really need to have the character represented by himself? So there you have Frankenstein's head. Don't worry, we will revisit those pieces at a later date. Having a look at Dracula, Like as Spot had already indicated, I gotta say this is a really good vampire Dracula. It's, again, not quite, I don't say it's quite correct to Bela Lugosi, but of the vampires that we've gotten, whether it be McFarlane Toys, Diamond Select Toys have done a lot of the Universal Monster figures. I gotta admit, I mean, this is probably the closest thing to a Bela Lugosi vampire Dracula figure that we've gotten. Likeness-wise, you know, it's not quite right there, but it definitely looks a lot more like him than some of the other Dracula figures that we've gotten. He does come with a cape. The cape is removable. You just simply slide it off. That's really all you have to do. Some nice red detailing in the inside. Nice red paint. There's the outer piece of the cape. You just snap it really over his shoulders and he's good to go. A peg would have been nice. You know, a peg you could have put on his back, pegged the cape in, so at least it wasn't going to move on you. But, I mean, to have it removed, you can also have just Dracula without his cape. Certainly, if he's going to operas and other dinner functions, having the cape might make him look a little more suspicious. That might just be my hunch. He is decked out really nice with his jacket with tail and back. The details carry all the way down to even, in fact, his hand, where you can see he's got rings on his fingers. A nice pale, light skin on Dracula here as well. I find all these stiffs, all the joints on these figures are extremely stiff, or at least Dracula so far is extremely stiff. Surprisingly, they are pretty articulated too for the fact that these are older figures. The Dracula here, he does have articulation in the head, which looks like he only swivels back and forth on the head. You can't bend it up and down or anything like that, but not terribly bad considering what we've gotten in the arms. The arms are on pin and socket joints, so the arms move out and they move forward, back, bend at the elbow. Unfortunately, no swivel or anything in the forearm. He has a rotation in the hand, so you can kind of have, you know, thriller style. I don't think he has, from what I can see, any swivel in the waist. If he does, perhaps the tail of his jacket is hindering that. Yes, he does, in fact, have a swivel in the waist. Once again, it was just really stiff. Swivel in the waist, though you really can't move it all that much. And then he's got a swivel in the legs. Now, I thought initially it was one of those leg swivels where you actually had to rotate the leg to move it forward, rotate it again to move it sideways. But surprisingly, somehow they've got it down. And I don't know why companies like Hasbro has such a tough time with this swivel leg. They're doing essentially the exact same thing, but they seem to be doing it right. He has a swivel in the upper thigh, he has a single bend at the knee, and a hinge foot. You can kind of even have him just slightly poised back, like so. He's just a really, really fun figure. And again, though unfortunately he's got a little bit of paint on the side, which I've just noticed now, just a little bit of paint on the side. But overall, I'm really happy with this figure. Really happy indeed. Generally with Halloween, what Spot usually does is usually get a lot of these Halloween-themed figures out on display. And, you know, I can decorate my place with them. I haven't really so much been putting out Universal figures, Universal Monster figures, because while they do look like the monsters, they don't quite look very much like the characters, the actors that played them. That likely will change this year, as I gotta say, this is one of the coolest Dracula figures now that I have reviewed and own in my collection. Unfortunately, they're a little harder to come by. Dracula and the others are from time to time available on eBay, so you could look on there, but then unfortunately you're paying aftermarket prices for them. Would I recommend Dracula here? Absolutely. Again, he is probably the most definitive of Dracula figures from all the ones that I have reviewed and certainly have picked up over the course of time. Just going to get Dracula on his display stand. The display stand also just accents this figure incredibly. Just get him going like that. If I could give Dracula here a terrifying rating, I would give him a blood-curdling 7 point... Actually, you know what? No, he deserves a little bit more than a 7.5 spot. Hold on there a second. Let's actually give him an 8.5. Some accessories maybe would have been a nice addition, but he's done so incredibly well that if you are a die-hard fan of the original Universal monsters, this would be the perfect Dracula to pick up. Today's terrifying, spooky spot, we're having a look at the very first figure of the Universal Studios home of the original monsters Frankenstein series figures. And we're having a look today at Dracula. Certainly stick around, guys. Spot's obviously got more of these figure reviews heading your way as we got to complete ourselves the 14-inch Frankenstein. So stay tuned for that. I'll see you guys next time. Woo!